A man emerged from the helicopter, introducing himself as the grandfather I had never met. He said, "Tonight, we reclaim everything they took from you. We begin with the name they used to keep you small." My name is Zoe Foster. 3 days earlier, I had been a senior risk analyst at Helioquary Brands. Tonight, I was simply a woman in a budget motel room, watching a storm rage, trying to understand how my life had unraveled so fast. The drive north from Boston had felt like surrender. I crossed the city line just as the first heavy snow began to cling to the roads, steering my sedan toward the faint outline of the Adirondacks. River Forge was the kind of town people chose when they wanted to disappear from the map. It was all evergreens, mountains, and spotty reception. After the past 3 months at Helioquary, endless acquisitions and regulatory deadlines that stretched into 90-hour weeks, I craved the quiet. I needed the numbing embrace of winter. My body still buzzed with the ghost vibration of the office. The burnout was deeper than tiredness. It was a slow wearing away. I felt fragile, almost translucent. My relationships, my apartment, my well-being. I had poured everything into the corporate machine, and all I had left was a persistent ache behind my eyes and a salary that barely covered the price of surviving in Boston. The diner materialized through the veil of snow around 10 p.m. A low, flat structure glowing with neon, proclaiming open 24/7. It was the only light for miles. I needed coffee. I needed a pause that wasn't my car and wasn't yet a motel room. I brought the resume inside. It seemed foolish, carrying a CV into a roadside eatery, but it was the only tangible proof I still existed, that I was capable. I had spent the previous week refining it, adjusting spacing, agonizing over action verbs. It was my lifeline. I settled into a cracked vinyl booth. The place smelled of stale coffee and sizzling grease. A young server, Noah, barely 20, gave me a nod and poured a mug without asking. "Just coffee," he said. "Just coffee and a quiet corner," I replied. I laid the pages on the Formica table. Zoe Foster, 31. My professional history reduced to bullet points. I uncapped a hefty steel pen I'd kept from my first real job and added one last note in the margin of the attached cover letter. Available for relocation within 10 days. It was untrue. I could leave in one, but 10 sounded deliberate. It suggested I had choices, that I was advancing toward something superior, not merely escaping ruins. I was rereading the contractual risk management section for the 12th time when my phone vibrated. A text not from Mason, my boyfriend, who had been conspicuously quiet all day. It was an automated notice from my Boston apartment management. Alert. Your smart lock access code has been successfully updated. Welcome to your new settings. I stared at the screen. I hadn't changed anything. I dialed the management office at once. It rolled to an after-hours service. I called Mason, straight to voicemail. I texted him, my fingers suddenly cold. "Did you change the apartment code?" A second message arrived from building security. "Miss Foster, per your request, your cousin Kira Hale has been granted primary access." My request. The coffee curdled in my stomach. Exhaustion vanished, replaced by icy alarm. I tossed a $10 bill on the table, grabbed my phone and keys, and rushed out, leaving the 3 pristine pages of my resume beside the half-empty mug. I was halfway to the car before I noticed, but by then the snow was too thick. I couldn't turn back. It was only paper. Inside the diner, Noah cleared the mug. He picked up the resume, gave a low whistle at the thick linen stock. It looked significant. He glanced toward the door, but my taillights had already vanished. He shrugged and set the pages beside the old-fashioned coffee grinder on the back counter, planning to discard them later. An hour afterward, another customer entered. He was older, late 60s perhaps, wearing a charcoal suit tailored to perfection beneath a thick cashmere overcoat. He did not belong in River Forge. He looked as though he owned it. He took a stool at the counter, ignoring the menu. "Coffee, black," he said. His voice was soft but carried over the refrigerator hum. As Noah poured, the man's gaze wandered. It settled on the resume beside the grinder. He reached across, cufflink flashing. He didn't ask permission. He lifted the top page. Noah watched. The man wasn't scanning. He was studying. His focus absolute, expression neutral until the second page. His eyes narrowed. He traced one bullet point under strategic oversight with a manicured nail. He read the contractual risk management section twice. He studied the name again. Zoe Foster. He pulled out his phone, compared something on the screen to the page, then dialed. I found the only motel in River Forge still showing a vacancy sign. The Mountain View Inn was a single-story concrete block facing a poorly cleared lot. The room was $65 cash and smelled of harsh cleaner and stale smoke. I sat on the edge of the stiff mattress, thin blanket around my shoulders, phone pressed to my ear. Voicemail after voicemail, management, security, Mason, even Kira. No one picked up. I was locked out. My possessions, my entire life, were inside an apartment I could no longer enter, while my cousin and boyfriend played house. The betrayal was so abrupt, so total, my mind couldn't fully process it. It felt theoretical, like a risk scenario I needed to quantify. Then the phone rang, buzzing hard against my ear. Private number. I nearly declined, expecting spam, but dread guided my thumb. "Hello," a beat of silence. Then a man's voice, calm, precise, aristocratic. "Am I speaking with Zoe Foster?" My blood froze. No one ever used my middle name. I hadn't even included it on the resume, only the initial Z.A. Foster. "Who is this?" I asked, voice tight. "My name is Elias Rothwell," he said. "I have your resume. It was left at the diner on Route 28. I sank back against the pillow. A stranger, a recruiter, maybe. "Yes, I left it." "I'm sorry. How did you know my middle name?" "It is an impressive document," he continued, sidestepping the question. "You list extensive experience in third-party vendor negotiations and sovereign compliance. And you also," he paused, "you have two deliberate misspellings." The air left my lungs, a missing M in government contracts and a transposed I and E in strategic implementation. They were intentional traps, digital watermarks to trace unauthorized sharing. I sat upright. I used those errors to create unique versions for different recruiters. "Who gave you that resume?" I demanded. "It was abandoned," he said simply. "But the errors tell me you are cautious. They tell me you anticipate betrayal. That is a rare and valuable quality." "I don't understand. What do you want, Mr. Rothwell?" "This resume, Miss Foster," he interrupted, voice still perfectly even, "is worth flying through a blizzard to retrieve." I thought it was figurative. But before I could clarify, I felt it, a vibration in the flimsy window frame. A deep, rhythmic pulse, thwump, 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 a mechanical heartbeat slicing through the storm. "What is that noise?" I asked. "That," Elias Rothwell replied, "is your ride. I am in the parking lot. Please gather your things." He ended the call. I rushed to the window, pulled the curtain aside. The lot had vanished beneath swirling white. The snow wasn't falling, it was whipping horizontally in a violent cyclone. The sound was overwhelming now, a physical force pressing against the building. A helicopter. A large, sleek black helicopter was descending onto the asphalt, skids barely 30 feet from my door. The rotor wash was a gale, ripping shingles from the motel roof. The night clerk, the same teenager who had checked me in, stood gaping in the office doorway, phone raised, filming in stunned silence. The engine pitch dropped. A side door slid open. A figure stepped onto the skid and dropped gracefully to the ground. He walked straight through the wind, blades still spinning overhead. It was the man from the diner, charcoal suit, cashmere coat. He approached my door, face calm under the strobing landing lights. He knocked two firm, deliberate raps. My hands trembled as I undid the chain and opened the door. Elias Rothwell stood there. Up close he was older, face lined with command rather than warmth. His eyes were pale, piercing gray. They took in my face, the shabby room, the phone still in my grip. "Miss Foster," he said, voice clear over the idling engines. "We spoke. Who are you?" He reached inside his coat, not for a card, for a thick cream envelope. "I believe this provides context," he said. I opened it. Inside was a genuine silver halide photograph, old and glossy. A young woman, beautiful and fierce, stood on a sailboat deck. She looked exactly like me, laughing. Beside her, hand on her shoulder, was a much younger Elias Rothwell. It was my mother who had died when I was 20. My mother who had always said her parents were gone, that they had cut her off for marrying my father. She had raised me alone on a teacher's salary, insisting we had no family. "You knew my mother?" I whispered, photo trembling in my hand. "She was my daughter," Elias said. His face softened for the briefest moment, an ancient grief flickering across it. "We were estranged by circumstances, by decisions long ago, not by my choice." He glanced past me at the motel room, then back at my face. "And I find you here, 31 years old, with a brilliant resume in hand, locked out of your own life by small-time grifters." He knew. I didn't know how, but the certainty was absolute. "I don't understand," I said. It was all I could manage. He gestured toward the waiting helicopter, door open. "I did not fly through a blizzard for nostalgia. Zoe, I came to correct a mistake." He stepped back, holding the motel door. "Get your coat. We are going to Boston. It is time you saw what truly belongs to you." The flight fractured time itself. The cabin was pressurized and hushed, rotors a distant thrum. We flew above the storm, not through it. Elias Rothwell said nothing. He sat across from me, strapped into cream leather, reading a thick financial report as though we were on a morning train. He asked nothing about my mother, my life, or the 31 years lost. He had verified his identity, evaluated my resume, and assumed control of my situation. I watched frost bloom on the reinforced glass, my mind struggling to reconcile the two worlds. The grandfather I never knew was a billionaire, and my boyfriend and cousin were, apparently, thieves. The betrayal from Mason and Kira was sharp and ordinary. Elias' arrival was vast, cold, and incomprehensible, like the thin air at altitude. We landed at a private airstrip north of Boston as the sky turned bruised violet, not yet dawn. Perhaps 4 a.m. a black sedan waited on the tarmac. The driver took my overnight bag. We drove into the city. Streets empty, glazed with sleet. Silence in the car was thick, charged. "They believe you are weak," Elias said, staring ahead as we turned onto my street. "They believe you are alone. They expect hysterics followed by retreat. It is what my daughter, your mother, would have chosen. She always retreated." The words stung, a deliberate prod at my pride. "I am not my mother," I said. "That is what the resume suggests," he replied. "Now we will see." The lobby of my building was warm. The overnight guard dozed at his desk. We rode the elevator to 12. Elias stayed 2 paces behind, observing. I walked the familiar hall to my door, 1214. The smart lock looked different, newer, higher-end than the building standard. My fob produced a sharp negative beep and red light. I entered my mother's birthday as code. Access denied. Pure, cold rage overtook shock. I struck the door, not frantic pounding, but 3 heavy, deliberate knocks, muffled voices inside, a chain sliding. The deadbolt turned. The door opened a few inches. My cousin Kira Hale peered out, blonde hair sleep-tousled. She wore my gray silk robe, the one Mason gave me last Christmas. Her eyes widened in surprise, then settled into slow triumph. "Zoe, my God, what are you doing here? It's the middle of the night. Why is the lock changed? Where is Mason?" "He's asleep," she lied, clutching the robe. I pushed the door. She stumbled back, and I stepped inside my own home, and everything tilted. It was my apartment, yet wrong. The scent was wrong, gardenia, Mason's mother Cynthia's perfume. My large abstract entry painting was gone, replaced by a gaudy gilded mirror. The coat rack overflowed with unfamiliar jackets. In the living room, my modular sofa had been rearranged. My books and belongings were packed into a dozen banker's boxes stacked against the wall, labeled in Kira's careless scrawl, "Zoe's storage." Mason stood in the kitchen under the stove light in boxers and tea, stirring a pot. He froze, spoon halfway to his mouth. "Zoe," he breathed, pale, guilty, terrified. "What is this?" I demanded, voice steadier than I expected. "What did you do?" "Honey, who is it?" Cynthia Dallow called from my bedroom. She emerged tying her robe, followed by Mason's father in pajamas, squinting. They were all living here. Cynthia recovered first, adopting strained sympathy. "Zoe, we didn't expect you back. We thought you'd stay in River Forge a week." "You changed my locks," I said. Kira stepped beside me, arms folded, fear gone, replaced by brazen confidence. "We had to, Zoe, you just walked out. You abandoned the lease." "I went upstate for 2 days," I said, voice shaking. "You took your resume," Kira countered, gesturing to the empty hall table. "You were clearly planning to leave. You'd been complaining about Helioquary for months. When we saw you'd packed." "You packed my things," I stated. "We were only helping," Kira's voice rose, performative. "Mason was so worried. He said you were falling apart, so we came to support you. We're just keeping the place warm until you sort yourself out." The gaslighting was masterful. They had crafted a story where I was unstable, the one who fled, and they were the caretakers. "Get out," I said. "No," Mason's father stepped forward, large and intimidating. "We have every right to be here." "Right." I looked at Mason. He stared into his pot, avoiding my eyes. "Show her," Cynthia said smoothly. Kira walked to the dining table, now covered in their redirected mail, and picked up a single document. "It's all legal, Zoe. We signed a new co-lease with the building. Mason handled it." I took the paper. Standard tenancy addendum. It listed Mason Dallow and Kira Hale as primary tenants, me as departing occupant, and at the bottom, beside their signatures, was mine. My e-signature, perfect, high resolution. My stomach plunged. It wasn't a crude forgery. 3 months ago, I'd signed a sensitive NDA at Helioquary. The file was too large for the portal. Mason, IT consultant, offered help. He needed to extract my signature as a transparent vector to overlay on the PDF. I trusted him. He kept a copy. "This is fraud," I said, words bitter. "That's your signature," Kira chirped. Management accepted it. "Mason," I said, holding out the paper. "Mason, look at me." He finally met my eyes, red-rimmed, weak. "Zoe, it just made sense. My parents sold their house. Kira's lease ended. You were never home. We needed a place. It's just an apartment." "Zoe, it's my home," I whispered. "Well, it's ours now," Cynthia said. She walked past me holding a large framed family photo, Mason, parents, sister at some beach, and hung it where my painting had been. "This will look so much better. Really brightens the room." The casual erasure was staggering. Kira, savoring victory, went to my open wallet atop a box and pulled out the supplementary card linked to my primary checking.